Season
There you go.
When this airs, we'll be in California. However, we're recording in Massachusetts.
Yeah, the final episode recorded in Massachusetts.
No, we have another guest one coming up.
Okay.
So,
okay, never mind. Almost.
Final episode of
So close.
Dan and Elise taping in Massachusetts. Yeah, we have one other guest episode next week. But yeah, season 2, I'm really excited about. Also, longest season one ever. We're like over 140 episodes, but
3-year season.
Very fitting, and I believe that there's something to that. I want to. I think reflect back on very, very, very quickly the last 2 years and just dissect it a little bit for any of the new listeners, which I feel like we've gotten so many over the past couple months, which we're so appreciative of. So to give just a tiny backstory before we jump into kind of season 2, what to expect and what we're excited about as we really journey forward into this new chapter that we're creating that's going to unfold and be written each moment of each day. Dan and I lived in California for nearly 10 years, and we were living in LA, and we're moving back to LA, the suburb of LA, Lake Balboa. So we'll be in a different area. But when I believe it was 2022, May of 2022, my mother had called me to let me know that she was diagnosed with lung cancer. I am an only child. However, I do have a stepbrother and a stepsister. My parents divorced just before I was 1. And so when my mother remarried, he had a son and a daughter, which thus became my stepsister and stepbrother. My mother had mentioned, like I said, that she had diagnosed with lung cancer and it was a tumor. They were going to remove it. She needed a lobectomy. So the left upper quadrant of her lung was going to be removed, which is a pretty major surgery. And I'm going to try to make these long stories very short. I decided there's something in me that just knew it was time to go back home and to be of help. Like I said, I'm an only child. And I just felt like a calling to do this. So Dan and I decided to move back to Massachusetts. And after that decision, it seemed like it opened just portals of initiatory experiences that both of our souls perhaps required for the evolution of this human experience. When we decided to move back, we were going to travel and drive across the country with our dog, and we were leaving at the very end of June to be there for the beginning of July, which was my mother's surgery. On June 6th, my mother called me to tell me that they found my stepbrother dead in his apartment. And it was like, holy fuck, what? Like, this was I remember being on the phone. I literally remember that day you were sitting on the couch getting ready to go to work. I got the phone and I like dropped to my knees and just like collapsed on the floor. Like it was unexpected. Like they just found him dead. So I jumped on a plane the next day and I spent quite some time, obviously in Massachusetts, for the funeral, and my mother needed a surgery prior to her lobectomy. That I was staying for. So I was there in Massachusetts for a short amount of time, or at least maybe about 2 weeks. And then coming back to California, I remember we only had 5 days to pack up all of our stuff, get it into the moving truck, and then ensue our drive to, Massachusetts. And so we get here, and my mother's surgery was at the beginning of July. On July 4th, I remember, because it was 4th of July, my uncle, who is my stepfather's brother, so basically my step uncle, went into the hospital and was feeling a lot of pain in his legs. They found cancer everywhere, all over his body, and he was literally dead in 2 weeks. So on July 18th. So right there, you can imagine from May to July, like my mother's diagnosed with cancer. She has 2 major surgeries within a month of each other. My stepbrother dies suddenly, and then my uncle dies suddenly. And we just got here and we were like, talk about hit by a cosmic 2x4, like boom, boom, but like what's happening? And it just broke me open in a lot of different ways. And within this wellness and spiritual journey, I do feel like I know that there's a silver lining beyond all of this. And I kept just trying to surrender and allow and be tapped into any and all resources within myself that I needed to garner for my own self well-being and self-care. And then fast forward to a couple months, we're like doing good. Like my mother, unfortunately, like the cancer had spread to her lymph nodes and she needed additional surgery. She needed chemo, and the chemo pretty much destroyed her body, where it set her into like diverticulitis, like offset that. She'd always had it, but like catastrophic, where she needed, I think over the year span, she had 7 major surgeries between like her kidneys, the lung, she had multiple colon and stomach surgeries. She had a foot removed from her colon, and then they, with all these scans and stuff, they found that the cancer had also gone to her stomach. Not the same cancer, I guess it was technically a different kind of cancer. So then she had stomach cancer for a while. That ended up coming out. Her tumor was removed in May of 2023. So just like a lot going on. The new year of 2023, other than my mother having the stomach cancer, like everything was, we're just, the clouds were beginning to part and like we could see some blue skies. However, in April of 2023, my cousin's husband called me, and my cousin, I call her my cousin, but I call her my cousin's sister because she really truly was the closest thing that I had to a sister. And that is not to diminish the relationship that I have with my stepsister. It just was not as close to her. She's much older than I am, as was my cousin, but she never lived with us in the house. Like my stepbrother lived with my mom, stepdad, and I for quite some time. I just wasn't as close. Like I said, I don't want to diminish the relationship, but this cousin of mine was really truly like my sister. I just looked up to her. We were the 2 only children within our our immediate family. So I think we just gravitated toward each other, where all of our other like cousins had siblings and we didn't. In April 2023, her husband called me to tell me that she had a seizure in the middle of the night. And again, long story short, they initially did some tests and thought it was a pituitary adenoma. And it needed to be removed. And she's like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? Like, do you want me to come out? She lived in Colorado. No, like we'll figure this out. So they had an initial surgery in May the following month because it needed to come out immediately. And it, again, another long story short, didn't pan out as well as the surgeons had hoped. They weren't able to get all of the tumor, but like looking back, it is because it was not a pituitary adenoma. It was like one of the rarest forms of cancer, and it was a tumor cell called ATRT, and it's like insane. She ended up needing to have a second surgery, and that's when I like went out to Colorado. And unfortunately, after that second surgery, during the procedure, she had a major stroke and never woke up from it and died a week later. And it was, I thought the previous year and all that like that was the worst things, like ensuing all of these, deaths and the cancer that my mother had been diagnosed with in like a very short amount of time. Like I thought that was the breaking point. No, that unfortunately seemed like a cakewalk compared, and I'm not saying that again lightly. It just seemed like, I don't know, maybe it was in preparation for my cousin's passing, because that really, I didn't even think it could be broken more, and it did. And that was really, really challenging, and just on so many levels. And so that was June of last year. She died on June 24th, 2023. So it has been a full year since kind of all of that happened. And even though nothing major has happened, it's been a lot of shedding, crying, decomposing of these versions of me that went through all of the scenario, not just within the last 2 years, but within this really, I would say 10-year span of living in California and then coming back to Massachusetts. And I say that because now we are venturing back to California. And when we were leaving, this is just kind of like funny to preemptively think about what we were coming here to like do. And I remember going into a bookstore with one of my girlfriends like a couple days before we left, and I had picked up Joseph Campbell's like Hero's Journey book. And I called you, I was like, oh my gosh, you haven't read this. Like, have you? Like, it just seemed so fitting for what we were about to ensue within this trip back to Massachusetts. Like, we're health professionals, like we're holistic, like what are we going to teach these people? Like, yes, we've just been on this hero's journey. Like, now we're going to take everything we've learned, everything, all the, versions of us from California back to Massachusetts to like nurse my mother back to health, to help everyone there. And I didn't even read the book. You read it. And I think it was like probably maybe 7 or 8 months ago, we were talking about it, and you said to me, this whole time we've had the hero's journey backwards. And I was like, I didn't get it at first. I was like, what do you mean? And you said, we were entering the hero's journey, this absolutely catastrophic unfolding of like what we thought was going to happen here in Massachusetts, to the complete opposite of that. Like, the highs and lows, and I was like, yeah. And not that California wasn't a hero's journey in and of itself. Like, there's multiple.
There's cycles and seasons to this kind of thing.
Yeah. And so it was like, oh my God, you're right. That totally makes sense. And now I purposely saying that because now hero's journey, we're venturing back to California, and we are very different people going back to very similar life there in California, but completely different energetically, frequency wise, vibration, everything. We've learned so much. I mean, I gave you a very brief story of
I'm amazed you
unfolded.
told that story in the 10, 11 minutes. There was so much that happened.
Well, yeah, there's again, and you can, and anybody who's more interested, I've talked about this on pretty much every podcast since at the beginning of the year, that goes much more into depth. But a bird's eye view, I very much see and understand that it was a requirement. I wholeheartedly believe I unconsciously chose these things to go through, to grow through at a soul level, deep initiations. And I say those words simply because I was told that on a profound like hypnosis session with someone that I work for inner children, for my inner children, in a way that like it needed to be brought to my attention. Like, you're human, like you do go through these initiations so that you can become the version of yourself that you're deemed to be, that the highest level of your soul that's continuing to unfold. And gosh almighty, have the lessons just come over the past 2 years in such a beautiful way, from everything from our relationship to my relationship with my mother, my stepfather, all of my cousins, all of our friends here that we'd been disconnected with, in the way that like we weren't energetically present with them. Of course, we still spoke to everybody from afar, but this was really like, you're in the mix of it. Like, we've lived in my parents' house, my childhood home, for 2 years. And I jokingly have said this to a lot of like friends of ours. It's like, you want to grow? Go live with your parents for 2 years. And I say that in the most loving way, because I was just able to really observe and understand a lot of the patterns, conditions, and programs that I received as a little girl. And it makes so much more sense. And I'm connecting so many dots. And now I have such more reverence for her as a child, and how this ego of mine has developed and created the reality that I was in, to truly keep me protective and in a survival mode, so that this could really disintegrate and wash away all of these distorted lenses and illusions that I thought was me, and that I thought were the people around me. I was like, nope. And it's been beautifully shown to me. And for the listeners who like are familiar with the show, the way that my intuition works is a lot of people's intuition works. Like, I receive downloads, like just one-liners, or lots of intuitive hits, or images too. And I remember one of the first weeks that we got here, I was sitting outside in the sun and I wasn't meditating or anything. I was just sitting there. I think I was listening to either a podcast or a book, and I got a download of, you're not here to teach them, they're here to teach you. And meaning I don't know if it was my mother, my stepfather, like, again, my family here. And I was just like, oh my God, I remember telling you, like, I had chills everywhere. Because like I said, at this beginning of like what I thought was the hero's journey, I thought we were coming in to help everybody.
To be the hero.
To be the hero. And I was like, no, just surrender and allow life to show you. Let life teach you what you require to learn and grow through.
Yeah, that's what, like, I think this really has been such a powerful kind of period for transformation. Like you said, use the word initiation earlier. So it's been an initiation for sure, and I think it's really cool that we've had the podcast as sort of this this way of sort of like tracking and sharing our journey. And it's really interesting to like look back at who we thought we were 2 years ago or three years ago when we started the show, to who we were when we left LA, to who we are now. And then just sort of the way things worked out, we ended up having this break, for the first break in 3 years, of having at least one episode every week for 3 years. And then we kind of stepped away for a little bit, and we've had some interviews in the meantime, but the energy around the show has changed. And in a lot of ways, I feel like it gave us this opportunity to have this clean break from maybe the energy of the show or our idea of what the show was, so that we could almost like come back to ourselves and regroup a little bit and really get clear on what we want this to be going forward, or what it is, and like what the show wants from us going forward. And I think it's just amazing to me how everything always works out perfectly.
Yeah.
Whether you want to admit it or not. Like you jokingly said that, if people want to grow, like go live with their parents. Like, at the same time, like, I wouldn't recommend this to anybody. This has not been my choice of how the last 2 years were going to go. As you explained before, obviously, like, a lot of things happened that we weren't excited about, or that we obviously wouldn't have chosen consciously. But now, like, kind of seeing where we are, it's like it makes sense that we needed to go through this,
and it needed to be in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Like, I would have ended up moving back, like, as soon as my brother died. Like, I would have ended up moving back like, there was, I think that was just, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Yeah,
that's what I want to point this out, because the second season, what I think is going to be really a theme of it is creating our own reality, and the power that we have, and the innate knowing that, like, gnosis, not even knowledge, like the deep feeling of knowing when it's time, or knowing when something feels right, or knowing the truth of something in my body. Before my brother's passing, like when my mother told me that, I gotta go home. I don't know what it is. I couldn't explain it to you. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I've got to be there. Like, it was just that deep gnosis. Exactly. Like, I could have fought it. We had so many discussions about, like, well, do you stay? And then I go back and forth. Do I just like well, what if I just go for a month and then come back? And like, there were so many moving parts, and I was trying to convince myself, no, like, I'm so happy here in LA. Our business is here, like, everything's here, like, your brother is here, like, and his girlfriend, like, all of our close friends are here, like, and I was trying to convince myself, but it was like, no, that deep knowing. And it's hard to describe it if you haven't felt it. But this is it's a knowing, it's a feeling.
And there's things, I feel like, almost like the idea of putting it into context and understanding what that knowing is wasn't necessarily possible at the time, but now looking back, it's very, very clear what was happening. And I think, like you mentioned, like, creating our reality, and it's something we were really interested in at the time, like 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And for years, like I'm like trying to learn all this stuff and really understand how the world works. And it's like, it's become so clear to me. And like, even just like looking at our life over the last few months where we've taken a break from the podcast, we've gotten clear on our energy and on who we are and on what we're doing. And it's like things changed so rapidly, so fast. And it's like we've had the opportunity to like step into who we truly are and like begin this process of really stepping into who we are and creating our own life.
If I may reframe that,
Yeah.
I believe truly that we've always been these versions. They just had too much muck and dirt on them. I think we've washed away a lot of it. So it's not that we're stepping into anything. I think we've washed away. And like I was saying, we've cleaned and cleared out so that like we've cleaned and cleared the stagnant energy, that frequency that was not serving us, those lower vibrations of scarcity, lack, fear, sadness, grief that was just so overwhelming. It needed to be released so that the newer energy could just replace it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think a big part of that, at least for in my opinion, or my part of it, my experience of it, has been releasing the addiction or attachment to the illusion of a continuous self. Where I've had this idea there's this idea that exists in my head of who Dan is. And for most of my life, I believed that we were all in agreement about what that idea was. But it turns out everybody that I've ever met, and even people I didn't meet, just walked by and saw me, have all had a different idea of who I am. And what I thought was like this solid, concrete Dan was only an idea in my head. And everybody I ever talked to, if I had actually been able to ask them, would have disagreed with me about who I was. So there's this idea where we want to have sort of consistency and continuity of who we are, when literally in every moment, over and over, all day long, every day, we are choosing who we want to be. And I think for so long, I just chose the same crap that was familiar or comfortable or uncomfortably familiar. And this whole period of initiation has been a lot of it's just like letting that die off. And it's like, okay, who I thought I was does not exist. I was the only one that was holding on to it, and now I've let go of him. And it's now moving forward, when I say stepping into, it's more of, it's like embodying the truth of who I have been all along, but didn't know it because I had this other idea of who I was trying to be.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
It does. And I think that the more we can explain it in that way, it helps the audience and listeners and us. And I do want to talk about the creation, or, co-creating our lives, because and I'm going to use the word unconscious here, because listening to, the first 12 minutes when I explained the last shit show of a year, 2 years, like, did I create that? No, or maybe unconsciously, right? That's what I mean. Like we're constantly creating, we're constantly manifesting, but what we're doing is doing it from subconscious belief patterns. The me that I think I am, like you said, the Dan that you think that you are, just Groundhog Day over and over. And what the universe and life is always trying to present us is a mirror to reflect back to us what's inside of us. I would have absolutely never guessed ever what unfolded over that like 2-year period. And I would have never wanted that. But I have to try to understand and tap into that at some higher level, some higher dimension. My soul truly knew that this was the fastest way that I could evolve into the version of myself that I will continue to grow into, or dissolve the older version of me that's no longer serving me, so that the higher aspect of me can work through me, like unencumbered, without resistance. No, I didn't consciously choose like my mother having cancer, my brother dying, my uncle dying, and then my cousin died. Like, absolutely not. But as broken as I was, I wouldn't be in this place right now with all of those circumstances. And I must look at, and I have looked at and wanted to look at, what is my relationship to each one of these circumstances? And am I going to let it define me? Am I going to let it break me? Am I going to let me become just like addicted to substances and say, oh, woe me? Like, no one would tell me I was wrong if I did that. Like, I just went through a shitstorm, and I say but I also mean you. Like, we both did this together. It just happened to be like people on my side of the family that died. But no, like I again, like I know that there's deeper reasons for it. And I want to just bring up like a couple instances that really synchronistically happened together that's like going to kind of follow into like this second season and our move to California. But we went to Costa Rica in November of last year, which was tremendously helpful. I like can't even tell you how life-changing that was, especially allowing like grief and sadness to be left there. But during one of the nights, we were in a yoga nidra session, and it was beautifully presented to us by our dear friend Brandy, who I really hope is going to be on the podcast in the second season. We've been trying to nail her down, but she was guiding us. And at the very end of it, I don't even remember what she prompted us to visualize within our mind, but it was something having to do with whatever picture your higher mind is wanting you to see right now. Like, just allow it. And have like, if there's like a mantra with it, but perhaps like have it speak. And I wasn't really getting anything. I was like wondering if I could think of other mantras, but like that's again the egoic self trying to figure it out. And as I released that and just let her speak, then I like quieted my mind even more. And I saw honestly just blackness. But what had appeared within my third eye was, all I could describe was almost like like a fly net, like that goes over like cabanas or something to keep bugs away, and then it has like zippers when you need to get in and out of like a tent, or like if you're in the African jungle, you don't want bugs on you. Like, it was like a grayish netting, and then it had a zipper. And I was like, okay, all right. So I opened the zipper. Again, this is all metaphorically within my third eye. Like, I see myself opening the zipper and like just looking out at like black, like just a vast blackness. And I felt the urge to just step. As petrifying as that seemed, it was just like, okay, step. And as I stepped, I heard, I'm stepping into the new. And as scary as that was, I was like, and then all of a sudden, I just saw a massive hand catch me as I fell. And I was just like, oh, okay, this is it. Like, here we go. This is the new Elise. Here we go. I have no idea. It's black. I don't know what I'm stepping into, but I trust that I'm going to be held and supported. And that higher, bigger version of me has got me. And I'm stepping into the new. And that was November. And then in January of this year, so that was 2024, I had a really profound hypnosis session, like I was saying, with this woman who I've worked with a couple times, that does a lot of like inner child and soul readings and whatnot. And I had worked with her previously, like right after my brother died, to like being like, what the fuck's going on? And she graciously brought me through this. God, this session was so long. I think it was like almost 2.5 hours. Like, we did a lot of talking, a lot of clearings. Like, she's just at an energetic level that's like the divine works right through her, and she knows. But I remember during the hypnosis part, and it's very wonky because like you're in hypnosis, so I can't remember the totality of it, but I remember her just saying the goal here is, I'm bringing you, source, the divine is bringing you back to pure innocence. Like, we're bringing you back to the event horizon. Any and all structures, energies, beings, shapes, formalities, frequencies, anything that has previously been within you, I'm clearing. We're getting it out. And I just remember her speaking about like, literally, like, I can't, I feel like it went on for like an hour, that she was saying all of these different like names and people, and like literally like even geometric shapes, like everything, just clearing them like from from me. And like, this is it. Like, you're back to innocence. Like, think of like the innocence of a child. Like, that's what we think of. It's like, you create your reality from this place, like the pure innocence of a child. You're at the event horizon. It's you. You are the co-creator within this life. And the way that you do that is from nothing.
Yeah. Like, she freed you to choose in this kind of the same way I was saying, like, without the old identity, without the old attachments or addictions or the old ideas and concepts and beliefs and all that stuff.
Yeah. And I'm still unpacking that because it was so profound and heavy. And I feel like even the sessions that I've done with her before, they still integrate into my body. So that happened. And then 2 weeks later, after that session, again, at the very end of January, I was doing another RIM session with the gentleman who hosted the retreat in Costa Rica. We were doing it over the phone, very similar to like hypnosis, like where he puts me into a trance and brings forth like, it's very profound. But again, it's more of like me dictating in ways. And I remember again being like in trance and allowing the aspects of me that needed to come forth to show me. And I remember one of the portions, like towards the end, it was showing me like the feelings of creation. And I remember I was in almost like a valley, and the only way that I could describe it, it looked very similar to like the Lion King, like when they're looking, when Simba's looking out, and it's like the hyenas, and it's like dark and cloudy, and there's like lightning, and there's like a really like scary, heavy energy. And I'm like, oh my God, like I was petrified. I was really scared, and I'm like telling him like in this over the phone, like, oh my God, I'm scared. He's like, what are you seeing? Because obviously it's again through my third eye, my under trance. And I was just like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm scared, like, but there's nothing here. Like, I don't see anything. Like, I didn't see anything other than like clouds and whatnot. And he's like, okay, like, do you feel safe? He brought me through a couple things and just allowing me to feel what I required to feel, like sit with that fear, sit with the uncomfortable, like you are safe, just, you know, be with it. And as soon as I did that, when I looked over to like the right-hand side, I just saw like, boom, like colors. It looked like a city, almost like from Candyland. Like just, I couldn't even describe it. Like didn't even look like real. It just like looked like colors and looked like anything in it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can see this. I can see this. He's like, okay, where's it coming from? I was like, I don't know. I'm just looking at it and it's coming. He's like, okay. And then I got it. Because again, he's not telling me what to do or what to do. It's me. My higher self is coming in, and I got it immediately. It's like, oh, that's creation. That's me creating, and not from a place of fear, from a place of peace and safety and contentment and acceptance and love. And I just felt my heart burst open, and I was laughing and crying at the same time. I was like, oh my God, get it. And it was just so profound. It's like that portion that I was seeing that was fear and gloomy and dark and gray and fearful. It's like, that is, I think, a very familiar place that a lot of us stay, especially me. I was trapped in the ego, thinking it knows what to do. It thinks it knows how to create, but it's creating from that survival and fear and scarcity and lack mentality. And I wasn't able to see anything. And as soon as I dropped the resistance to the fear that I didn't want to feel, it's like, boom, colors. And I was like, oh my God. And then when I wanted to see something, it just appeared. It was like, oh my God, wait a minute. I have the ability to do that. And it was so profound. I was like, yes, okay, yeah. So then I feel like all of those, so the reason why I brought up all three, they make sense. It makes sense. It's like, oh my gosh, okay. And again, like I'm enlisting help from all of these people. I couldn't be a bigger advocate to hire coaches, to see people who have a lot of experience to guide me, but it's like, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it. I'm picking these people, or maybe I'm not even picking. Maybe life is presenting me with the people that I required to learn and grow. And it's like, oh my gosh, yeah. So all three of those things, as I'm beginning to create this new reality, it's like, that's what I'm most excited about going to California. It's like, I'm this new, I'm a new energy. I'm a new Elise 2.0, or whatever you want to call it. Stepping into, even though it's a familiar place, it's like completely like it's new. and when I say it's new, it's like I'm going in with zero expectations. Like, I don't know if I'm going to do the same thing when I have a couple really cool ideas that I want to pursue, but I'm also like, I know that when I try to figure things out, it's like that's
Right.
resisting the creative urge that wants to come through me. And everything seems to now, as I've dropped the resistance to life, things just are working out. Like, how many times have I said, like, everything's just working out?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's kind of like, is this real? Like, everything's just synchronistically working out.
Yeah. And it's kind of like what I referenced that earlier. It's like once we set the intention that like, okay, we're doing it, it's time to go. It's time to step into the next chapter of our life. And we kind of let go of the past. Like we let go of like those storm clouds and the darkness that we were creating from, and just let it all go. And now it's like this, just kind of go with the flow, because it's got you. The universe is taking care of it. And it's like our imagination is God. That is how we access God from within. And God always says yes. And so often we choose to create and imagine the worst possible scenarios because we look around and we see things that, maybe we wouldn't have normally chosen. We wouldn't have chosen. And it's like, oh, it's not working out. So that's who I am. I'll just make more of that. It's like the uncomfortable familiarity they mentioned before. But there's just like something so beautiful about letting go of all that and trusting, and just with faith, knowing who you are and what you want. And then that's what you create. It's like, I am that which I am conscious of being. And that's the secret to everything. We're not what we want. We're not who we believe ourselves to be. We are exactly what we are conscious of being. And then the world reflects back to us that consciousness. And if we are conscious of being a victim and being sad and being disappointed, then that's what's going to be reflected back to us. And if we are conscious of being an aspect of the divine, who is a co-creator of their own reality, and somebody who is love and shares love because they make love in their life, then you get reflected back to you love. And I think as soon as we were willing to be conscious of ourselves as the co-creators of our reality, we've been presented with nothing but opportunities and support and guidance. And I think that's like the secret to life.
Yeah. It has been very humbling to let go of the victim mentality, the woe is me, and the ego's identity that has cultivated the persona that I was up until recently. I do not feel like the same person. Like I don't know how else to describe that, because I look the same, right? Or for the most part. But it's an indescribable feeling of like, oh my God, these things aren't bothering me anymore. They're not triggering, or I have like more hope and more joy and more contentment and more peace. There's so much less worry. Now, am I completely, different? Probably not. Like, I still do worry about things. I still get like anxious, but I'm in such a different place where I'm able to recognize it and know that, all right, this is coming up. This is teaching me something. Here we go. Let's sit down. Let's get to it. Let's reveal, let's uncover, instead of that avoidant energy. Wait a minute. Like, no. I'm a victim to the circumstances of my life. That's why I said that. Peter Crone always says that we're not victims to the circumstances of our life. We're victims to our own perspective of the circumstances of life. And that is just that. It was probably what I required to hear, because like I said, I could have just, and I did for a long time, sit and cry and like not do anything and what I needed to do. Like I think I had so much sadness within me that life was presenting all of these things that were sad happenings, and I just cried and released it. But then I really wanted to take a look at, okay, where is the perspective off here? What's my relationship to the death of my brother, the death of my uncle, like what's going on with my mother in a very codependent relationship? Like if she were to die, like the I guess it was very codependent relationship with my cousin that I didn't even realize was codependent. Or that I just had formed such an attachment to her as this really like this piece of me that was instantly gone. And what was my relationship to that? And then now what's my relationship without her moving forward? So it's garnered such a beautiful reflection of all of these relational aspects in my life to people, but other things too. What's my relationship to Massachusetts and this home that I was in, and the relationship that I have to my inner children, and the relationship that I have to these memories that are here, and how can I begin to really understand the dialogue that's going on in my head to uncover the wounds or the traumas that I went through, to hold the space that I require for myself. And knowing that I'm here now as this newer version of me, the parent of me, then I can give the support and love and acceptance that I didn't give my inner children for so long. And I do believe that that is what was required to now step into this new chapter of creation, right? Like the book of Elise and Dan is open, the book of Elise is open, the book of Dan is open, collect, like there's, and it's like we've just turned the page in the chapter, and it's blank. It's that it's white technically if you're in a book, but it's that black. Like I still don't know what's gonna happen, but it's just like I'm stepping out, and I know that there's a hand there that's gonna catch me and catch us, and it's been beautifully already presented in so many ways with the move and everything coming together, financially, car wise, like movement wise, like timing wise, like a house being available for like everything. It was like, oh my god, this is real. And like this is, and I feel like we're just tapping into this creation. It's like, holy crap, oh, like I'm so powerful, I gotta take a step back. Like, okay.
Well, you bring up a really interesting point when you say like, is this real? And it's like, I think that we've obviously always had this power, and it was clouded in the same way that you were saying before, like we carry around all this crap from our past, and these ideas and beliefs and different concepts. And I think that so often people go through major transformations, and I know this has been true for me, huge moments where it's like I step into a completely new version of myself, but then don't kind of do the work to maintain it or like truly embrace it and embody it, so it doesn't get integrated, and then you lose it. And so like we kind of look to the world to validate us in a lot of ways, and there's a little bit of a delay. It's not instantly like, oh, I feel great, and turn around and everything is great. It takes a while for that consciousness to be reflected back to us. So everything that's around us is the consciousness that we used to be. And it's like we are essentially like an alien in our body in every moment, because we're bringing a new consciousness to the old environment. And it's by maintaining that level of consciousness, that higher state, we have the power to transform our environment to something that matches that. But I think that very often we look to the world for like external validation, which is another way of saying doubt. And I think even the smallest bit, the smallest need for anybody else to validate our own truth is us denying our own divinity and us denying the truth. And then I think that is where most people lose it, because that's what I think where I lost it so much, where it's like, and I've talked about this very openly on the podcast for the last couple of years, of going through these transformations and then looking around and be like, am I crazy? Did I lose my mind? How is everybody that I meet not seeing this? But I am. I must be crazy. And then I start to doubt myself. and then you take a step back and you fall back into the old patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd kind of go through it again. You're like, okay, I'm completely new. And then you look around, it's like everybody's like, no, what are you talking about? So I think it's really easy to lose that. But also, if you can have that faith in yourself and like really be true to it, I think it becomes undeniable.
Absolutely. And you know, it's part of the human journey. Allow yourself grace. You recognize that, you know, and we've had these conversations. But it's just practice. You recognize it so frequently, you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's changed, I'm reverting back. Nothing's changed, I'm reverting back. But you catch it. And even though it seems like it's been a long time, what 2, 3, 4, 5 years, however long it's been, that's nothing, especially since your identity and who you believed yourself to be has been nearly 4 decades in the making. So if anything, you're figuring out it real fast, what's changed, what's transformed, what's happened. And then it is almost that, what you're saying, like it's almost the wanting, like you want to see it immediately.
Yeah.
And then it's like, then it's boom, oh, doubt, because the ego wants to be right about itself, and it wants to be right about the identity and the personality that it's created. So the personal reality is going to stay the same. And it's like, okay, where can we work together? We're not getting rid of the ego. You can't get rid of the ego. We wouldn't be here without the separation of the identity of this vehicle, this human suit that we're in. It's enlisting, really, it's surrender and just allowance of that to be in relation to the newer version of you. In a sense, I mean, I haven't fully figured this out, but I know I feel much more open and aware, and it's all of this, everything that we've talked about for the last 45 minutes too, all that's ensued over the last like 2 years. But even before that, with the start of this, you know, health and wellness journey of a decade ago, it's just helping me understand who I truly am, and really taking off mask and layer and cleaning and clearing. And it's like, okay, I've never felt more like Elise than I ever have before. And I don't even know who she is because I've been told. So
Right.
like, I don't, again, can't put it into words, but I feel like myself.
Yeah.
Don't know how that's possible because I thought myself was myself. And it's a paradox, and it's kind of fun and funny and to joke around, because all that we've talked about is very like heavy, deep stuff, but also like bringing that childlike innocence within our day-to-day lives. And I'm trying to do so much of like cultivating the playfulness and the creativity and the creation, and like being more imaginative and allowing this intuitive nature to really guide me into this next phase that's already ensuing, which I'm so excited about. And I'm so excited to kind of really see who the Elise is going to be in California and what's going to transpire. And I feel there's going to be initiations there as well, but I think that they're going to be good.
Yeah.
Like there's something deep down. It's like, all right, the hard initiations of like grief and sadness, like I think that was a lot for a 2-year period. We're going through another initiation phases, but like in a good way. And I'm excited to bring the listeners along.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun stage in the podcast.
Yeah.
I guess, where it's like we've got some really cool interviews coming out. We've got some really cool stuff to talk about.
Oh my gosh. So we've done so many good interviews recently, like, yes. And we'll begin releasing these, you know, obviously now, since this one is the first one, but yeah, in the fall. And then we've got some epic people lined up for even 2025. Yeah, we've had, gosh, so many people on. We've been talking about consciousness, lots of mindset. We've been talking to people, some financial advisors, like about like money and the energy of money and being able to use that to create. We've had people, we're going to have a gentleman on talking about portals and stuff, and some mystical experiences and
near-death experiences.
We
touch on a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah, we've got some really epic guests coming up. I'm so excited. Yay. Anything to close out this last, well, this first episode of
episode of season 2. Yeah, I just want to stick around for season 2, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to share who we've become, what the show has become, and just share this journey of living a deep life and creating our own reality.
Yeah, I agree. I think fun is a great word, but I think I would use the word, it's going to be empowering. It's really, what I am feeling, and the knowing and the understanding and the excitement that I have for myself is truly what I want for everybody. And I want to empower all of us to tap into and uncover and reveal and let go of the constraints and limitations that we've unfortunately been just trapped in, that we were unaware of. And there's so much blank space ahead of us.